right. In that case, let's get started, guys. So today we're speaking to Ace from Aerodrome, and we have Mikhil as always from pSTAKE. The topic of today's space is to discuss pSTAKE liquidity. Like I said, this is the first time we're building pSTAKE liquidity outside of Cosmos or outside of BNB, and we're going to talk about why Base, why Aerodrome, what's pSTAKE got cooking, what's Aerodrome got cooking. And I think we can begin by a quick round of introductions. Our guests here today, do you mind, introducing yourselves, introducing the project that you're representing, as well as where you're speaking from today?
Absolutely, yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Mikhil. I'm the co-founder of pSTAKE, and I've been building in the space for about 5 years now. I'm an engineer by background. Love playing football, or like how people in the States call it soccer, although I never would call it soccer. It's football, guys. And yeah, I'm kind of a math geek, a little bit of a numbers guy, and more of a degen. And I just dropped my spoon here, uh, but yeah. So that's about me. I've kind of enjoyed building pSTAKE, and we've done a lot of things around liquid staking since 2020. Very excited to be building the next leg for pSTAKE's growth and figuring out how we can do exciting things with teams like Aerodrome. So very excited to be here talking about pSTAKE, Aerodrome, and just DeFi in general.
Amazing. Before diving into the crypto aspect of things, do you want to share which football club do you support and why?
I would rather not. It's too painful to talk about it. People are gonna come mocking me in the Telegram group chat. It's Manchester United, guys. uh, yeah, it's been a rough decade, I would say. Hopefully, the next one is better.
I think hopefully United also has the same values like Aerodrome and pSTAKE to be building for decades. Ace, do you want to go next, please?
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me to the spaces, and welcome to Base and Aerodrome. I'm a long time observer, and I believe a very early user of kind of the persistence finance product several years ago. My Obviously right now I'm a contributor to the Aerodrome team, essentially a core team member. But before that, I'm part of a small partnership called Four Moons, and one of my partners is Boz Manzalji, who was the CEO of Akash for many years. So you guys worked in the very same ecosystem, and I'm sure know each other well. But yeah, I'm mostly in charge of the majority of the marketing, and contribute quite a bit to the BD, onboarding new projects and introducing our novel mechanism to new teams in the communities that you bring with you. And obviously you guys have been around for a long time, and I'm excited that you'll have a way to manage your liquidity in a new fashion with Aerodrome.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you here today, Ace. And let's dive right into it. So starting off with, the common thing between the pSTAKE token as well as Aerodrome, which is the base L2. I think it's one of the highest or the fastest growing layer twos that has come into emergence for quite some time now. Whether that's from a user perspective, liquidity perspective, on-chain dApps, or even the meme season. I think we call it the base season that's coming soon, and all these things. So Ace, from a DeFi protocol or a DEX perspective, obviously Velodrome is something that exists. There's now Aerodrome on Base. So do you want to talk about why the move to Base, and why kind of Aerodrome decided to launch on Base as its first in a way extension?
Sure. So the move to Base with like the sister protocol launching was pretty easy for the team to make. We all of us basically have a Coinbase account. We know how valuable the Coinbase brand is and how great a product company they are. So when they, showed their strategy to support the Ethereum ecosystem and help scale the on-chain user base through the support of the base layer 2 chain, like it was a pretty, easy decision. we get asked a lot of times, like, why didn't you just launch Velodrome on Base and have like a multi-chain interactive experience? And it's a good question, but Aerodrome really, or I should say Base really needed a focused DEX for the ecosystem for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, Base does not have a token. Base is providing lots and lots of excellent dev tooling, resources, exposure, obviously users and institutional liquidity, but they're a regulated company listed on a US equities exchange, and they have to be very careful with any kind of like governance token that's like being given out with a value associated with it. So Aerodrome really has become sort of the economic engine to help bootstrap liquidity for the entire chain. So the native token that comes with Aerodrome, Aero, is given out to liquidity providers. And so every protocol that we work with has a way of bootstrapping their liquidity. And that basically has this network effects across the entire Base ecosystem. The other thing that is very specifically, I guess, unique to Base is the Coinbase arm, and they're going to have some specific needs for their users, because I mentioned this before. They have like an institutional arm that might require certain custom features or custom pool types, permissions. It's something that doesn't exactly scale the way I would say the more open DeFi of like the broader Optimism superchain is going to look. So, we wanted to have, again, a very focused DEX to accommodate the needs of all the different things that Coinbase wants to do. And so far, our thesis seems to be working. We haven't really seen the demand so much from the institutional side, or like, I would say more regulated users of the Coinbase exchange and services, but we're definitely seeing ecosystem growth based on our assumption that Aero could be sort of the overlying incentive token for the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And what's how Aerodrome is positioning itself also, right? I think is a central layer for liquidity on Base. I think from a stats perspective, if I look at the numbers very quickly, Aerodrome I think does almost $1 billion in monthly trading volume, which is huge. It has around $650 million in liquidity. And considering this, with the fact that, if I'm not wrong, Uniswap is also deployed on Base, how has the experience been to kind of grow Aero on Base, as well as get that liquidity in the first place?
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. We came into the Base ecosystem very early, back in August. I think it was probably the third or fourth week. So aside from some meme coins and, like you mentioned, Uniswap, maybe one lending protocol, there was not much going on. So at first I was a bit skeptical myself as an observer of like how Base is going to compete in the layer 2 landscape without having monstrous incentives and a war chest to give out to bring in devs and liquidity. What we've seen since then is this very organic community that's developing with long-term focused builders who understand the value that Coinbase brings to the table with their, what is it, 100 million or something KYC users on the platform, maybe more than that. And building a very seamless experience for them to get into DeFi. So all of these, teams that are aligned kind of for the long term have started working with Aerodrome to get, listed on our DEX and work with us in terms of building deep liquidity for their token. And like you mentioned, the growth has been somewhat unbelievable. We're getting close to $1 billion in TVL, and I think we've given out approximately 60 million in rewards to the VE Aero voters. So we're still under 9 months into this whole experiment, and things are really, really churning.
Amazing. I think I personally also believe that these centralized exchanges that are launching chains, whether those are L1s or layer 2s, have some sort of unfair advantage in a way, because they have that distribution sorted in the first place, right? Because there are tons of users on centralized exchanges, and then getting them onboarded to DeFi becomes much easier. Yeah. Talking about the same point, Mikhil, with you.
Actually,
Yeah.
although I would say BSC didn't do very well, right? I think it depends on how you're looking at it. So I think Base is more forward looking. Coinbase has looked at the bigger picture, which is that things will go on chain rather than going off chain. And if things do not go on chain, they're obviously quite big already. But I actually believe there's a better chance that Base ends up doing more volumes than Coinbase at some point in time. And I think that's an interesting reason for Coinbase to bet hard on chain over off chain, but not necessarily every, like we have OKX doing X1 chain. That hasn't done that well yet. It may do well, but I think Base has had phenomenal success already. But that's kind of because of Aerodrome and other projects like Aerodrome.
Absolutely. I think, Base is probably one of the only ones to look out for when it comes to growth from here on. Yeah. Talking about Base specifically, also, Mikhil, obviously the relation between pSTAKE and Base is quite new, but Coinbase Ventures is an investor in pSTAKE as well. So can you talk about, when we were thinking about expanding the pSTAKE tokens liquidity, how come Base was a consideration, and also the very first one to kind of venture into?
It's a very interesting question because when I was looking at where the token should go, I didn't even look at Base. Actually, I first looked at Aerodrome. So kind of the other way around, where Base was like you could see Base, but that's because of Aerodrome. So we were looking at different DEXs and especially on layer twos and Ethereum doing which were doing well, and obviously Aerodrome has been doing phenomenal. I think lately the volumes have like shot. Certain pools are doing better than Uniswap as well. So it's pretty evident that Base was kind of like Aerodrome was kind of like in its own like main character era, I would say. And it made a lot of sense for us to look at Aerodrome, and that's when we decided, okay, let's take the token to Base and build liquidity on Aerodrome. But it was actually Aerodrome that made us move to Base and not the other way around.
That's amazing. And when you think of this as well, besides having that diversified liquidity, what other benefits do you see? To have pSTAKE on Aerodrome, have pSTAKE on Base?
I think it's more than just having pSTAKE on Aerodrome. I think for me personally, how I've viewed this is pSTAKE is doing liquid staking for BTC, and that's a very big play for us. So if we have to look at what would be the obvious next step, it's to take the liquid staked Bitcoin token onto Aerodrome and Base, because this is obviously I think Merlin has been recently doing, they've been taking their Merlin BTC to different chains in the Ethereum ecosystem. I think they've taken it to Linea, Scroll, and some others, and they've seen decent success there. Now imagine a liquid staked Bitcoin or a yield generating version of Bitcoin that you could take to different different dexes on different chains. It becomes very exciting already, and the fact that Aerodrome is on Base definitely helps, because you could build very interesting I would say a very interesting dynamics around the yield generating Bitcoin token on Base itself. So for me, I think that's the obvious next step. Obviously, the fact that you're building liquidity for pSTAKE is a great thing, but you have to go beyond that and try to find ways to work together with Base and Aerodrome on different levels. And I think this would drive a lot more demand to the protocol, to the products that we build.
Yeah, that's a great point that you mentioned, because I was just looking at the numbers as well. I think Aerodrome has a version of Bitcoin liquidity there, but I believe it's somewhere shy of almost $3 million across multiple pools. But Ace, coming to you, like, how do you perceive something like a dynamic like what Mikhil just mentioned evolving, wherein there is an yield generating BTC that is powered by pSTAKE come onto a DEX like Aerodrome and an ecosystem like Base?
I mean, it's awesome. I think everybody wants capital efficiency. And for those who are, say more open-minded when it comes to Bitcoin and don't mind wrapping it or doing something besides holding it in their wallet and then burying it underground or something, this is a much much more productive way of like holding crypto. So if you're able to get a native yield on a wrapped Bitcoin or a liquid Bitcoin asset, and then LP it on a DEX to get additional emissions like Arrow, like it's phenomenal. I mean, it's one of those things that unlocks and opens a lot of people's eyes to the power of DeFi. And you guys are OGs. I don't need to tell you this, but people who are new to DeFi, a lot of like Coinbase users and Coinbase Smart Wallet users will discover this sort of life hack, and it's a great way to kind of convince people that DeFi is real. You should dig into it, learn about it, and take control of some of your financial decisions. And I think that's really what made me so excited about this whole space back in like late 2020s, I would say, 20 teens, I should say.
Absolutely, I think this is definitely the first start of a long-lasting partnership when it comes to pSTAKE and Aerodrome. I think pSTAKE token liquidity is just the stepping stone to having the yield-generating Bitcoin whenever pSTAKE launches, which by the way is coming pretty soon. So keep an eye on that, and we'll definitely have it on Base as well, especially on Aerodrome. You mentioned capital efficiency, about when it comes to Bitcoin yields, and Aerodrome with the V33 mechanics obviously is one of the most capital efficient dexes when it comes to building liquidity. I think overall, when it comes to liquidity emissions, Aerodrome manages around a 3x incentive efficiency in this model. So for some of the listeners who might not be fully aware of what V33 is, what pSTAKE incentives is, what Aero emissions are, what V-Aero is, do you quickly want to run down everyone on this mechanism, on this novel mechanism that Aerodrome is bringing to Base?
Yeah, I'll start with what you mentioned with the incentives multiplier. It is a very cheap way for protocols to get liquidity for their token pair. And what that means is, if a protocol like pSTAKE is looking to, get ETH pSTAKE liquidity providers, traditionally, you would deposit incentives directly to a master chef contract, which is sort of the sushi model, and give out your liquidity incentives that are essentially going to be sold because you're renting liquidity. What the V33 model has done is created another layer of this this incentivization, and it's through voting. So no longer are the liquidity providers directly incentivized by you, the protocol. You are incentivizing voters on Aerodrome to direct emissions to the various pools. So pSTAKE, you could deposit $10,000 in a voting incentive, and liquidity providers would receive a 3x multiplier in terms of the number of Aero emissions that they're going to get for the liquidity. So that's like the, kind of what you mentioned with a 3x multiplier. It's an extremely efficient way of getting liquidity for your token, for your pool, I should say. So that's kind of a very distilled version of how the DEX works, and I think it's worth spending a little bit of time discussing it in more detail. So we are a DEX similar to Uniswap. It's sort of built off of the Uniswap and Curve primitives with the convex layer built on top. So it's like we've pulled these awesome novel DeFi primitives from battle tested contracts that have had billions of assets deposited and flown through them into a kind of all-in-one DEX, and that's this V33 model. So the three pool types are stable swaps, which come from Curve, I should say. The volatile asset, which is like a Uniswap V2 pool, and then our latest is Slipstream, which are concentrated liquidity pools, which are very similar to Uniswap V3. So there's basically three participants in this game. There's the protocols like yourselves that have your token listed on the DEX. There's the liquidity providers that add liquidity to the pool. Sometimes that can be, your treasury might deposit pSTAKE ETH assets. but anybody in this like permissionless world of DeFi can be a liquidity provider. Anybody can be a market maker. That's what's kind of cool about DeFi, right? And the third group is the voters, and they have locked up their Arrow tokens, and they can do it from anywhere from a day to 4 years, and you get more vote power the longer you lock your tokens up. And like I said before, the voters direct the Arrow incentives to the different liquidity providers. And how do they decide how to do that? That's a big component of this. It's through the voting incentives that you, the protocol, are depositing. So voting incentives come from, like I said, deposits from protocols directly, as well as swap fees. So all of the swap fees on the DEX, 100% of the swap fees are available for voters. That's a massive shift from like the Uniswap or the Sushi Swap model, where the liquidity providers get the fees themselves. So if I hold I hold a VE Arrow NFT, and I have access to voting across probably like 150 different pools now, I'm going to logically allocate my votes to where I can get the highest returns and rewards, and that's like given out in swap fees and voting incentives. So there's a lot of competition between the protocols to essentially provide the highest incentives, and in return for their high incentives, they'll get a ton of Arrow incentives for their liquidity providers. So we have this really cool flywheel effect where the larger the pool sizes get, the more volumes they'll receive, the higher the fees that they'll start to produce, and it's sort of this they'll get additional Arrow incentives each week. So we're really starting to see that with some of the major asset pools, like you mentioned, like USDC. We're currently seeing crazy amounts of growth in terms of the volumes and TVL, just past Uniswap, and some of the other big meme coins on Base are also seeing crazy volumes through our pools, and that's giving them even more incentives for building their liquidity. So yeah, it's been an exciting experiment, and I think there's some primitives and design here in this V33 model that are still not yet really understood by, I would say, the market, and we're very bullish about where this is all going.
Yeah, that's very true. I think we share kind of the same opinions as you here as well. I think the V33 model, especially, so there's a concept called Delta 4 when it comes to just businesses and companies. So what it essentially means is, every time the delta of efficiency of something is greater than 4, you unlock like a pot of fortune. So Delta 4 businesses or companies are essentially ones that kind of create an irreversible behavior. And I think that's what's happened with this very new and novel mechanism of V33. I know, Mikhil, you're a big fan of mechanisms in general. So just wanted to ask you, how much of a consideration was this when it comes to capital efficiency, and also, as you said, right, we selected Aerodrome because that was an apparent option even before considering Base. So how big of a part did it play to make a decision to go to Aerodrome versus compared to something like a Uniswap when it comes to the capital efficiency of V33?
Actually, it was the biggest consideration, because the moment you see Aerodrome and you see the success, the next thing you see is how did they achieve this. And when you realize, oh, this is how they're doing it, you're like, okay, this makes a lot of sense, and it's the easiest way for us to build liquidity. So I think it was one of the biggest considerations, other than the fact that Aerodrome was actually killing it already, right? So yeah, I think, and also the fact that this, obviously, when you take a token different places, you have to take into consideration many things, which is the risks associated with the team who's building it, how's the protocol, is it secure. And the moment it's the Velodrome team building Aerodrome, it's all of a sudden it's very easy for you to make that decision that it's as legit as it gets, right? So for us, the biggest consideration was obviously the fact that you could build liquidity in the easiest possible manner without spending too much. And the second factor was, okay, who's building this? So both those things were pretty easy. Both those parameters together made the decision very easy for us.
There's a lot to be said, I think, Mikhil. You talked about this a little bit. The team that's supporting all of the partners that are on Aerodrome is, it's an ecosystem focused team. And it's something that I would say when you compare us to say the other DEX giants, it's just we're very much focused on the social layer and our partners' success, because the purpose of this DEX is really to help you guys achieve your liquidity goals. Volume will naturally flow to the pools, if there's demand for your token, and we work with good teams that are already doing great things organically. It's like we didn't build Aerodrome to prop up people's projects. It's very much like we just want you guys to get enough liquidity for your awesome project. And we're going to let the market kind of discover that on its own. And I think we established enough of trade routes through DEX aggregators that we might just sort of be a middleware to some extent, but we definitely focus our I guess the social aspect on working directly with you guys as protocols, because that's we're really just trying to do our best to help you guys achieve your goals.
That's very well put, sir. I think it's safe to say we're all based, but the B here is for Bitcoin. Coming to the token liquidity, actually, Mikhil, it's been exactly a week, I think, since the pSTAKE USDC concentrated liquidity pool went live. So do you want to quickly talk about some of the numbers when it comes to the liquidity amount, the incentives, the votings, and all these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I'm not wrong, there's about $70,000 of liquidity in the pool, and I think volumes would be like $50,000 plus, if I'm not wrong. Since the pool went live, we're providing 25,000 pSTAKE tokens every week in incentives, and which you can earn by voting with VERO. And then I think if I'm not wrong, the pool APR, since I checked in the morning, was about after I think in the afternoon evening it was around 1300% APR on LPing, which is pretty crazy to me. Obviously these numbers can vary and depend on different things, price being one of them. But yeah, it seems like the pool's picking up quite well, and it's attracting some trading volumes as well. So it definitely looks interesting and seems like we are headed on the right path here.
Yeah, those are indeed some crazy numbers. And from an incentives perspective, what's the thought process? How long do we see, participating aerodrome epochs consistently?
I mean, as long as we have to, right? Like, I think nothing we do here is short term. We kind of focus on things long term. It's the mindset that we go in with, which is why we are also building for Bitcoin, because I don't see us building for anything else that you could build for, let's say, a decade, right? People here think in, especially in this industry, it's so easy to think in months and weeks and days even. Forget years. I want to say we want to think in like terms of 5 years, 10 years, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us to build for Bitcoin because of that long-term mindedness and the fact that Aerodrome exists on Base, which is something we know. Both Aerodrome has good history and Coinbase, obviously. It's going to last for a long, long time. So taking those things into account, it's, I would say, like, for as long as we can, right? So as long as pSTAKE governance continues to provide with those incentives, because from our perspective, I see a lot of merits in doing different things, not just building liquidity for pSTAKE. So even expecting more pSTAKE tokens to be emitted towards Aerodrome for building liquidity for liquid stake Bitcoin in the future.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I think we're definitely here to stay when it comes on base and aerodrome. Is to touch up on the same point from your perspective. Obviously, from a centralized exchange perspective, pSTAKE is listed on OKX, HTX, and all these leading centralized exchanges. But from a DEX perspective, we're still in the phase of bootstrapping that liquidity. With Aerodrome being a very key partner. So with what Mikhil mentioned, that we're going to be here every week, showing up with incentives for pSTAKE liquidity. And the fact that Aerodrome, I think if I'm not wrong, has over 160 plus tokens listed currently. How do you see pSTAKE liquidity growing on Aerodrome?
Yeah, I mean, Mikhil basically nailed it. It takes time, but the pools are very much going to be discovered like by very high APR. It's a reputable project that's been building for many years. Obviously you've got holders of your token in different ecosystems, and it's likely they'll have to kind of navigate the bridging and migration, and that's probably things that are ongoing right now. But yeah, this model, it essentially is meant to really help bootstrap over time. One of the cool things that our protocol partners are doing is essentially providing liquidity from their own treasury on the DEX, and then leveraging the emissions that they receive in the Aero token to reinforce the incentives for voters. So that's something in the past people have said that they called it bribe recycling, but basically it's a way to have like a zero cost basis incentive for votes. And I think that's a really excellent approach to how do you bootstrap a pool. And like I said, it works over time, and the larger share of the pool is from the pSTAKE team. The higher amount of emissions you'll receive and be able to kind of do whatever you want on a flexibility point of view. Obviously, recycling the incentives is one way to do it, but also locking up the tokens and voting directly for the pool is also another way to do it. And we have a great program going on right now where we're providing what's called Flight School, and basically we're providing additional airdrops of VE Aero for 3 mechanisms. One of which is locking the token. You'll get a small bonus of VE Aero. You can also get VE Aero based on the number of incentives that you deposit, which you're already doing, and then the third thing is token volume. So we want to make sure that you guys are able to leverage all those components to get the emissions high and sustainably high.
Yeah, and I think I think Aerodrome has also done really great when it comes to such initiatives, because it truly goes to double down what you said, right? I think when you mentioned that Aerodrome is more of a social layer when it comes to liquidity, and these multiple programs that you're running, whether those are I think some of the OP incentive side or even USDC incentives for bootstrapping USDC liquidity. I think that's really a testament to these things. And funny that because when you said the bribing cycle, I also kind of laughed a bit, because we really didn't do great by naming it bribes, right? Because when you see from a perspective of someone that new and they hear the word bribes, they're going to be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, that's an Andre Cronje-ism. He coined that term, and I think collectively the teams involved are trying to upgrade our terminology. So voting incentives.
Yeah, that's the way to go. 25,000 pSTAKE voting incentives and not bribes on Aerodrome. Lastly, I just want to get to both of you to talk about what's coming next individually. So maybe Ace, do you want to go first and talk about, Aerodrome has obviously scaled a lot when it comes to liquidity, being the leading DeFi protocol on base as well. So what's next for Aerodrome?
Sure, I'll mention 3 things. The first one is just our mission to become the top DEX in terms of volume on base, and we're currently the top in terms of TVL, but Uniswap still has a ton of liquidity that we're actively encouraging users to move over to Aerodrome because the APRs are higher. And I think organically we're going to start to see more volume flow through Aerodrome pools, especially for like ETH, USDC. And that's through our slipstream pools. That's the concentrated liquidity, and like you guys have set up. It's just a very capital efficient way of being an LP. The second thing is we're already talking to some layer 3s that are building on base about having an Aerodrome instance there, and it seems like that's going to be a high demand product and requirement for these layer 3s. And that's why we've dedicated a DEX again for base. It's like we want to go as deep as we need to go with the Aerodrome. And the third thing is Coinbase's on-chain summer is very imminently approaching, and that's going to be really exciting for builders. There's a build-a-thon for Coinbase Smart Wallet users. There's tons of really cool features like gas incentives, where you basically can do anything in DeFi without paying transaction fees. Lots of good protocols are participating and sponsoring, including ours, and we're excited to see what gets built during the build-a-thon component. and that's hopefully going to bring a ton of new users and new capital and new products into the Base ecosystem.
It sounds super exciting, and definitely, I think on-chain summer it is going ahead. Mikhil, from pSTAKE's perspective, obviously we recently announced the huge move to building yield slash liquid staking product for Bitcoin. But what's coming next for pSTAKE?
Yeah, I think like you put it, it's the most important thing is to ship this product in a secure manner, because building on Bitcoin is not super easy yet. Hopefully it'll get easier and better as time passes by, but that's the most important thing for us, getting the product to launch in a safe, secure manner, getting traction, and finding unique and innovative ways to get yields for Bitcoin and the liquid Bitcoin token holders. So obviously starting off with Babylon, where the BTC deposited into pSTAKE will be staked with Babylon and secure various Cosmos chains to generate some yields. But down the line, how can we do additional things to generate yields in the background for our users in the most safe and secure manner? Obviously it's easy to go down the path of trying to run the basis trade, or do some arbitrage, yield arbitraging opportunities, but trying to find innovative ways to generate yield in a secure manner, and then becoming like the asset that everybody prefers to use for Bitcoin. So we've seen WBTC have decent traction. I would say like it's, if I'm not wrong, about $10 billion in TVL and liquidity exists for WBTC. How can we surpass that and go after, like, everybody is holding WBTC, how can we first get them to convert to liquid stake BTC, because there's some yield in the background, and then going after in a big way to BTC holders themselves, and making this a more appealing solution by building it in a way where it becomes decentralized, and is just as secure as holding your BTC. I think there's nothing as secure as holding your BTC, to be very honest. I won't try to mislead people by saying, oh, there is something, but I think there could be something that's very close to that. Obviously, there will be trade-offs because you're earning yields, but making this product so meaningful for people that they really wanna hold the liquid version of BTC that pSTAKE issues. So that's kind of the goal. And yeah, I think we'll do a bunch of things around the launch. We'll have some interesting launch plans with some incentives and some exciting opportunities for people to get in early and enjoy using the protocol. Yeah, I would say that's kind of the objective for us. A very singular objective, not trying to do too many things in this moment, just being super focused on getting this product out, get traction on the product, and make sure people can access this product from whichever chain ecosystem they are in, and take their BTC to different places. Find yourself maybe using Aerodrome BTC with a liquid version of Bitcoin, staked Bitcoin, and yeah, doing exciting things. So that's kind of the objective.
Yeah, that's very well put, and I think definitely the single objective definitely helps, because I think the lesser the better. The more laser focus. Obviously, no pun intended here when it comes to laser eyes, but the more laser the focus, the better it is. I think I can best summarize for both Aerodrome and pSTAKE. What's next is to become category leaders in a way. For Aerodrome, it's to become the leading liquidity base on the base ecosystem. For pSTAKE, it's becoming the leading yield slash liquid staking product for Bitcoin. And I think we definitely see a lot of paths crossing for the both of us in the future. Yeah, I think with that we can call it a day for this very interesting discussion between pSTAKE and Aerodrome. We have no questions as per, so I can quickly summarize everything that we've discussed. So the pSTAKE token went live on Aerodrome on Base just last week. We have incentivized a pSTAKE slash USDC concentrated pool on Aerodrome with 25,000 pSTAKE tokens. You can check this out at aerodrome.finance. Once you connect your MetaMask wallet and switch to the base chain and go to the liquidity section, you can view the liquidity providing options for the pSTAKE token, as well as earning the pSTAKE tokens when it comes to incentives if you are holders of vAero. So if you hold vAero, you can vote for the pSTAKE USDC pool, earn pSTAKE tokens. And if you are happen to have pSTAKE tokens, you can provide liquidity to earn Aero emissions. Yeah, that's it, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you have a great rest of the day ahead. And thank you everyone for joining in as well. And we'll catch you in the next one.